Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to speak in this conference. It's really interesting, and for me personally, as someone who actually uh, was to some extent a product of this new Europe, which the Charter of Paris has given rise to. It's very interesting to go back in the time and see first to listen about the experience of people who participated in this process, but at the same time also to see the how much hope, how much optimism we see in this charter, and to compare where we are now. Obviously, it was not easy at that time, and honestly speaking, it gives me now again more strength and optimism to work hard to achieve the goals that have been enshrined into the Paris Charter. But since I represent the Parliamentary Assembly of OSCE and the Paris Charter actually gave to some extent the birth of the current OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, I'll speak about that, and then of course we'll be ready to enter into discussion with the participants. First of all, to remind that the Paris Charter states, recognizing the important role parliamentarians can play in the OSCE and the CSCE process, we call for greater parliamentary involvement in the CSCE, in particular through the creation of a CSCE Parliamentary Assembly involving members of parliament from all participating states. To this end, we urge that contacts be pursued at parliamentary level to discuss the field of activities, working methods, and rules of procedure such as CSCE parliamentary structure, drawing on existing experience and work already undertaken in this field. Since its early stages, the Parliamentary Assembly offered a platform for exchange, allowing MPs representing well-established democratic institutions to share with fellow parliamentarians from newly founded democracies best practices and important information that enables them to exercise their oversight and policy-making functions. The statutes of the Parliamentary Assembly are dominated by the focus on parliamentary diplomacy. Its members possess an intermediary function. They pass information between the international and national levels, acting where necessary as translators for colleagues that might be less familiar with the political processes taking place, so that jointly they can be more effective in scrutinizing their national governments. The Parliamentary Assembly has long been involved in mainstreaming parliamentarism across the OSCE region through a constructive and engaging institution building approach, enabling MPs across 56 participating states to engage in the most inclusive parliamentary assembly globally, which represents, by the way, almost 1 billion citizens. Concerning the role and the evolution of the Parliamentary Assembly, I say a few words about that because that will be the basis to speak a bit on the future, which is, well, the main topic of our current panel. Over the years, the relationship between the Parliamentary Assembly and the OSCE has evolved into a genuinely fruitful cooperation. Today, the OSCE executive structures and the PA work together in a non-competitive, collaborative, and complementary spirit. This can be exemplified by the growing number of coordinated public messages by the OSCE and the Parliamentary Assembly. The elected status of parliamentarians gives the independence and advantages of soft diplomacy that can at times open doors to dialogue in a way not available to governments. Multilateral engagements of parliamentarians across the political spectrum can build communication channels and promote peaceful solutions to pressing and longer-term challenges to the security of the region. This plurality and inclusiveness of views constitutes perhaps the most distinctive and unique characteristic of the Parliamentary Assembly, consistently engaging legislators in constructive dialogue despite diverging or confronting political views. The Parliamentary Assembly brings immense contribution to one of the OSCE's flagship activities, election observation missions. During the past 29 years, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly has led and assisted more than 180 observation missions across the OSCE region. I skip part of this part of explaining what actually is the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly to say a few words on the future and some of the current activities of the Assembly. It's in its institutional role, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly has been a consistent and a forward-looking driver of further development of the OSCE, having proactively engaged in all major reflection exercises in the history of organization. Through its 2015 resolution on Helsinki Plus 40, building the OSCE of the future, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly has shown its steadfast commitment to the OSCE principles, contributing dynamically to the debates on the future of the organization, highlighting the need for intensified cooperation and complementarity of actions among the OSCE structures, and urging participating states to foster a new impetus of cooperation in all three policy baskets. The Parliamentary Assembly has long been making efforts in increasing awareness of the OSCE, a key, for example, by advocating for a dynamic interpretation and better implementation of the OSCE's Code of Conduct. The COVID-19 health crisis has been a major driver for reflection amongst all international organizations, including the OSCE and its Parliamentary Assembly. Ensuring public health has now reaffirmed its importance as the most pertinent and cross-dimensional challenge in security. While this inflicted even more challenges to the concept of effective multilateral cooperation, it nevertheless allowed for a reflection on existing alternative means of international cooperation. A new impetus for parliamentary diplomacy should be considered as one of the most inclusive, effective, and engaging solutions against political deadlocks. After the failure to reach a consensus on the reappointment of the heads of institutions, the Parliamentary Assembly addressed an open letter to the ministers of the participating states and organized a brainstorming retreat to discuss course of action to deal with the institutional crisis at hand. Parliamentarians discussed major challenges for the OSCE, highlighting that the current leadership vacuum is not a crisis per se, but rather a consequence of a long-standing and much more wide-encompassing deadlock. This was caused by a general lack of interest and knowledge for the OSCE at the political level in a good number of participating states, which in turn contributed to a stalemate at the diplomatic and permanent council level. The lack of interest can be attributed to the failure to see benefits of the organization due to advancement of other European or Euro-Atlantic security structures, limited geographical presence of field missions, only handful of beneficiaries in the region, growing mistrust due to lack of implementation of commitments. None of the factors above, as true as they are, negate the relevance and importance of the organization as such. Thus, the participating states must engage in discussion on what is essential and doable and raise awareness about the issue of the OSCE. Against this backdrop, the Parliamentary Assembly, as perhaps the only fully functioning institution now, stands ready to generate new political interest for governments and to bring back high-level political attention to the OSCE. In this regard, the Parliamentary Assembly proposes a political manifesto to be signed by high-level political personalities to recommit to the principles and call on participating states to overcome the current crisis. The Parliamentary Assembly also suggested that more awareness-raising events about the OSCE with participation of COS, think tanks, academia, and politicians should be organized in participating states. And lastly, the national parliaments should exercise their oversight powers by generating political pressure on the governments in regard to the implementation of the OSCE commitments. Well, thank you for your attention, and I hope to have a fruitful discussion in this panel. Thank you.
Not so much as a reaction, but of course, we need to listen carefully to Russian concerns, in this case, Mr. Turchanov. On the other side, there are other types of concerns regarding the role of Russia. But again, I would like to say that OSCE, as it is now, it's a unique tool. We need to preserve and use this tool because in difficult times when Europe seems to be more divided than ever before since 1990. We need to try and reverse the course, yeah? And it's responsibility for all member states of the OSCE. I think we need to come back to the principles and ideas of the Paris Charter and try and review or reconsider our own, when I say our own, I mean the positions and policies of all member states, and looking back to see maybe we can really try to reconsider our own decisions, our own actions, to try and focus on the differences and difficulties when we see now where's the reasons, where are the reasons for that. And if we do that, I think we can reverse the course of developments in Europe and in the world as well. From that point of view, as I mentioned at the beginning, I represent the Parliamentary Assembly, and the Parliamentary Assembly will not give up. We'll continue to make our efforts to revive the OSCE. We will continue to focus now much more on the coordination and cooperation between the parliamentary arm of OSCE and the governmental arm. And we hope that we can give some good ideas for the future, because I finish by saying that we represent the people. We are directly elected representatives of the people of OSCE, the OSCE nations, and we want peace. We want focus on rule of law and human rights, and we hope that also governmental arm of the OSCE will try to focus as well on it, and we are there to help achieve that. Thank you.